Welcome back to another The Freelancer on IAK Sunday at 3 p.m. Eastern. I hope most of you are spending some time with your mom. And if you can't spend time with your mom, I hope you're thinking of her fondly and my condolences. But I don't expect anybody to be watching this right now. Still, today, we're going to get some work done on our creations whenever you get a chance to watch. So, as usual on The Freelancer, today we are going to do two Pomodoro style writing sprints of 20 minutes each. I'll have some music accompaniment in the background for those of you that are doing something other than creating and need a little motivation. That's what The Freelancer is all about. In between those two sprints, I'm going to talk about a much maligned subject in fiction, and that is show versus tell. Not so much an issue for script writing and film, but very much an issue for every other medium out there, in that there is a line between telling your audience what's happening and showing them, and what that line means to writers of all kinds. But for now, technical difficulties because of the storm. I'd like to get into plugging away at my manuscript for Legacy of Heroes 2 Rising Stars. I'm in the middle of a big action confrontation sequence, and it's been a lot of fun to write, so I want to get back to it. So I have my 20-minute timer set up on my desktop over there, and we're going to get started. As usual, I think I'm going to go with the lo-fi beats. I do enjoy them very much. So, music going on, my mic is going muted, and I'll see you in 20. Okay. That was the end of writing sprint number 1, and I clocked about 655 words for what I've been working on, which is fantastic progress in 20 minutes. We also have some comments. Let's take a look. Oh, beep beep from Bat Sauce. Good to see you, Bat Sauce. Flip City Magazine stopped by. Hello. Been sitting here working and forgot the music was you also working. Very good. And John A. Douglas dropped in, says, got a lot of work, but dropping in to leave a like and comment. Show him and tell him, Daniel. Thank you. That is exactly what I'm going to do. So, show and tell, or in this case, show versus tell, is a common issue in fiction writing, both in the professional, independent, and amateur spheres. It's an esoteric concept that most people don't get. We think about the concept of a story being told because that's the word, storytelling. But the thing that makes people come back to a world or an idea, and sometimes just a standalone novel about a specific adventure, is the sensation of it all. It's not just the listening, it's how you experience it personally when you read the material. If a writer has that wonderful ability to describe a field of flowers in such a way that you can sense the sunshine on your skin, even though you're sitting in your house in your favorite chair, if you can smell the pollen in the air or the hint of rain coming, if you can close your eyes and imagine that clear, flat blue of an empty, cloudless sky and all the different colors of the flowers as they're being explained to you through a great many descriptive words sometimes, and sometimes not necessary. It depends on the writer. But when that happens, that's what sticks in people's minds. And so show versus tell is exactly what I'm talking about. I can tell anyone about a pretty field of flowers that I found. But as a writer, it's my job to show it to them with words. You can say beautiful field of flowers and everybody knows what you mean. But if you describe it to such a aesthetically pleasing degree that another person can imagine it, that's the power. That's the difference between show versus tell. We often forget as writers that in our daily lives, we interact with the world, most of us anyways, through 5 senses. You know, we see things, we hear things, we smell, we touch, and we taste. And that's how we get our sensory input. So if you can recreate that to your audience, then they'll feel like they're standing in your world as opposed to just hearing about it. I'm sure somewhere along all of your lives, you've met somebody who just has that natural storytelling gift when they're sitting at a table. The ability to explain and detail a story that they experienced and are often retelling so vividly that you actually feel like you can touch upon it. Sometimes we have that nostalgia reflex where someone tells a story and we've had a similar thing happen. So immediately there's that connective psychological sense of, oh, you've experienced this too. That means you are like me. That's different. And fiction writers often get that wrong. we spend a lot of time with our favorite concepts, and we can often mistake those concepts as showing the reader and bringing them into our world, immersing them into our story. But that's not what's happening. What's happening is they're making a connection to something that the two of you share, writer and audience. Every now and then, I'm pleasantly surprised. It happens not as often as I would like, but every now and then I'm pleasantly surprised by a story where there's a particular scene, and it's usually just one, because the author's not thinking about it, but there is a scene that's so vivid in their mind that they're capable of describing it so that it becomes vivid in mine. And I have a pretty active imagination, so take that as you will. I can see what people are trying to describe to me pretty easily. But for the average person, or maybe certain individuals who say don't have an inner monologue, or someone like a writer friend of mine who has a thing called aphantasia, which is, without going too far into it, it's basically you don't daydream. Like, your mind doesn't have a visual conceptual system. You can imagine concepts, but you can't imagine what they physically look like. You have to sort it out. That could be very difficult. But when a reader experiences a world through the magic of words, it's like those videos of people with sensory disabilities who receive technology and start to hear for the first time. Like that power of imagination. It's the same thing. When you can taste the rain on the wind, when you can see, these cotton candy like clouds rolling across the sky, when you can feel the almost silk sensation of flower petals in the words that are being given you as they're describing a field of flowers. And the reason I'm saying so is because my daughter put a painting of a field of flowers in front of me, so I'm using that as a reference. When that happens, that's magic. And that's the magic of fiction writing, to take things that aren't really there and put them in people's minds so they can experience them. But we often, as amateur and independent writers specifically, it happens in the professional mainstream sphere too. A lot of people will get away with it. But for us, which is what I'm most concerned about, helping us grow better, the time taken to really dream what it is you're trying to write about, as I put it in one of my books, brilliant neon cacophony of lights. It's a big word, and it's basically discordance, where everything's just so overwhelming that it starts to not make sense. But in that little sequence of words, I tried to describe a futuristic city full of capitalistic signage. It's all bright and it's all flashing and it's all in your face. And I wanted to describe that in as few words as I possibly could while still getting the point across. But if I just said there are neon signs everywhere and they are very bright and they are very distracting, it's not quite the same. Doesn't hit. You don't feel it. You can think it for sure. And maybe psychologically you could connect with that because you've experienced being disoriented by a lot of big, bright lights. But you're not imagining those lights. You're just thinking about them. Where most people are anyways. And that is where show versus tell falls apart for most people. We want to get through what we're doing. We want to get to the end. We want to get it out there and put it in people's hands. And occasionally a corner cut here and there is not a big deal. But all too often I read manuscripts with a ton of telling. And sometimes it's head hop telling, and we'll get into that in a moment before we hit that second writing sprint if I end up having time. But the telling in independent stories, it overwhelms a lot. And some of that is other people on social media being like, don't do this, don't do that. Fucking do what you want to do. Tell the story your way. Describe it. Make me want to live in there, or at least hang out in there while I experience your adventure. Now, as far as the telling side of what's called head hopping, which is switching perspectives, there is a trap that a lot of us fall into, and even I've done it because I do multiple POVs when I write. I wrote an entire first person novel and absolutely hated it. I thought it was way too limiting, but it was a great challenge. But when I write multiple points of view, I always have to pull myself back from he thought. I always have to pull myself back from going into super ridiculous detail on something that goes through a character's head and realize that that's me trying to tell the reader some part of the character's personality that I want them to know, but I'm just telling them. I'm not showing them the character's personality through their behavior. And social media lately has created this weird, bizarre space where words have become more important than actions. But in the really real world, as they say in The Crow, nobody's walking around telling everybody every single thought in their head. They're just thinking it and they're going about their day. So you need to see people to recognize who they are. You need to watch them, experience them with as many of your senses as possible. And no, I am not saying taste them. That's weird. Stop it. But see them and hear them, to a certain extent, smell them. But all of those things give us a better impression of what each individual person is like. We get to experience the surround sound version of sensory input with each person. In fiction, it should be the same way. Now, we can, of course, cut corners, and sometimes it's easier. Sometimes it's part of the narrative, and that's okay, that you get inside somebody's head and listen to their thoughts. But telepathy is a weird thing. And if you're going to open that door, you're going to end up leaving yourself a lot of weird plot holes and potential issues by sticking the reader in the brains of your characters. First person is a little different because it's like you're sitting at a bar next to the character and the character is telling you what's happened to them, but they're recounting it because it literally just happened. Like your best buddy comes in and he's a little bruised and haggard and his eyes are kind of wild. And he's like, dude, you won't believe what just happened. That's what first person really feels like. Being in people's minds is a lot of telling, in my opinion. Anyways, you can decide and you can tell me what you think in the comments, and I may read them. Who knows? I would like to, but today I was really, really busy being a good son, so I didn't get a chance to go back and look at the history. Anywho, we've got 20 minutes left, and I want to get back to the writing. So I'm going to reset my timer here, and let's do it. Back to the music, back to the writing. The best part of the day. All right. That is the end of the last sprint for today. I'm going to wrap things up real fast. Got to a good stopping point just before the 20-minute mark, so I'm pretty happy with that. And that would be 677 words, around 1,300 words in those two 20-minute Pomodoro style writing sprints. Hooray for me. Love doing that. And I hope you also got some work done on whatever it is that you were doing, whether it was writing, drawing, painting, cleaning your room, as the psychological Kermit says. Whatever it is, spent an hour doing it, and you do so consistently. That is what I am hoping the freelancer will do for you. I am Daniel P. Riley of whimsyland.org, literary coaching and services. I help creators turn their dream into a reality. You can check me out, of course, on whimsyland.org or follow me on X at Mr. DP Riley. And as always, keep creating.